I wanted to do a reminder of the upcoming deadline for a poster session at Fielding, which I believe is August 15th. And the lab leaders met yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and we were talking about submitting a poster based on just the pilot study that we've done in the music study. So perhaps we can save that to the for the music study meeting. We can talk about what that entails. We could talk a little bit if we have time today about doing presentations. I think we can do a bigger lab session on just how to do a presentation, how to make a poster presentation, for instance. We could cover that, although I do think there's a video somewhere. I keep meaning to look that up. Was it you, Josh, who said there was meetings with Katie McGraw coming up, or who was, somebody said that, I think, at our meeting? Is Dr. McGraw having some Zooms to answer questions about posters?
I think Steven shared that with us, right?
Oh, okay.
Steven, for the upcoming fielding session, there's like info sessions about the poster submissions.
Yes, I have it flagged in my email. Let me see. Tomorrow, actually, at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, there's a info session. Maybe let me send this out to the group real quick.
Great. And the lab leaders were reviewing goals for grad students in the lab, and one of our goals is to have students take advantage of opportunities to present at various places. I believe uh, I sent around something a little while ago that was an online opportunity to present. I'll keep looking for stuff to send. We're getting ready to hit some of the big conventions in the timeline this year, like APA is in August, so the applications for that don't happen until the following fall, and also for International Communication Association. But there's National Communication Association, there's other meetings, and like I say, I just happened upon this one that was you're able to do completely online, so that's always something to keep in mind. But you know, basically a presentation, whether you give it like we have been doing in here, an oral presentation, or if you sit on a panel, or if you do a poster presentation, a lot of times you're presenting original research. So it is an APA style thing where, it has an intro, it has a method, it has results, has a discussion. They're usually quite short. Only like it's usually like big invited presentations that are an hour or something like that. APA has changed a lot of formats in recent years. They have a variety of things, like they have in a non-insulting way, I think of it like a three-ring circus. So there's like when you go to APA, there's all these literal like different kinds of rings and stuff. There's people in them with microphones. There's like little sets that look like they're on television. There's people are dancing, like whatever. There's all this stuff going on, and I think they try to put some exciting, provocative, hot topic kind of things in those, and those are mostly invited things. Um, but there's always poster presentations at any of these kind of conferences where you, long story short, at the beginning of a discussion of presentations, you create the text and then you have it printed. Nowadays, it's usually fabric that it's printed on, and it's a big thing, and you can have it printed on site or you can carry it with you. There's different options for that, but it boils down to a quick summary, like an abstract of your paper, but specifically with the little, here's the intro, here's the method, here's the results, here's the discussion. And in terms of your CV, your curriculum vitae, those are things that are valuable. It depends on who's evaluating. People who are interested in your research will be evaluating things like your presentations, your uh, works in progress, and your book chapters, your books, and your journal articles. Those are the, have I left anything out there or other things to say about that? Oh, okay, so, okay, thank you, Stephen, for that. We've got some more references. We're talking about, I usually call it social categories in the media, but intersectional categories like race and gender and socioeconomic status, age, things like that. Um, about your bios for the lab website, let me show you where to put them. This is that I shared this resource. It's just a few minutes ago. It's the Annenberg has a host of different types of reports on gender, race, et cetera, sexual orientation in the media. And so I sent you some of those links there in the chat. Let's see. So I wanted to show you where the folder is. Let me go there. Oh, wait, it's right here. Okay, so, oh God, stop showing me political photos. OneDrive. Jeez. No. You do it on email and then you have to do it for every. I want somebody to add up how many minutes during Zoom meetings people are logging on.
There's that SNL sketch where I think it's SNL where they're like a fake Zoom meeting. It's like, oh, like let me share my screen. Oh, like let me find the thing. And it's just like, and then it's just like over. And they don't even like talk.
We're not even having the meeting now. So what am I doing? I'm looking for the with the bios. I just did that. Okay. Where is it?
I tried to add one in and it wouldn't allow an upload, which is
Mhm.
why I emailed it to you. So there might be,
Okay.
we could see it. I could see Angel's, but I couldn't add, it wouldn't allow an upload. So that might just be a little button or switch or something.
I sent each person an invitation so that they were supposed to be able to edit that folder.
Okay.
But you may not have gotten that. And if you just can't put it up there, I can put it for you. But now let me search here in my files. Here we go. So it's called Lab Bios and Photos. And let's see, where do I have the settings? Okay, here is who I invited to edit. We got Kaylin, Angel, Brian, Katie. Let me, more people may have access because this item is a shared folder. Okay, so let me
Yeah, it's
go.
weird. I don't see a button to add a new folder or anything.
Let me see.
Well,
I
I
don't
just
think
clicked
you
the link.
were, let me keep sending people who aren't on this little list. Thought I'd send it to everybody. So Stephen. Let's see, let me check back. Angel, okay. Jesse.
I totally dropped the ball on this entire bio project, so I will get on that ASAP and get it to you like right now.
No problem. In fact, I thought we could even
You can use me
eventually
as a
work on
lab
it.
rat if you need to.
What's that?
So you can use me as a lab rat if you need to. I just have to clear
Okay.
everything with my agent, obviously. I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, and really these are like 3 sentence bios too, because it's, we want to like scroll down. You could have contact or you could put links to your other media that you want to share. Let's see, who have I guess I feel like I did more than is in there, but I guess I don't even have to do these separately. Okay, so let's try that. Josh. Okay. Who else? Who am I missing? I don't remember if you were on that list, Andreas.
We'll find out.
That's right. Then, let's see. Mindy. If you can think of people I'm missing, who else? Who is in the lab? I always want to break out into song, not because I'm a singer. I just always like to break out into song. I want to sing, who else is in the lab? Who's in the lab?
It's not working for me.
Andreas, there's another person who wanted to be a research assistant.
Is Jean in the lab? I've seen her name around.
Jean.
I think she's just part of the video game lab this term.
Yeah, I think technically, but I'm sure she
Oh,
wouldn't.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's you know it's I guess she asked me for the entertainment lab, but all right. If you have trouble with that, yeah, just send it to me and I'll upload it. But I put Tim DeBolt on there so he could just take him out of there. Yeah, Jesse, it's mostly about the picture, so you want to like think of like what props do you want, what what setting.
Right, I'm just trying to like picture what character, like, is this like more academic or are we bells and whistles? No, I'm kidding.
Exactly. Maybe like you riding a horse or playing with a puppy.
Right, I was maybe thinking more like a beach scene with like a fan moment, maybe some seagulls.
It could be comedy too. I love there was a book, I think it was a Mystery Science Theater book, and every one of the people they were holding a dog, but it was the same dog in every photo. So we could all just try to take a photo with the dog.
I would think at fielding that we as media people could have more fun than everybody else.
Exactly. You're like, what's up? What's up with those people? All right. We can work on bios. The other thing is that soon, like in the next, say, 2 to 4 weeks, the Oxford Handbook of Media Psych, second edition, is going to come into print. And we were talking about that yesterday, and Perry suggested maybe we use some lab time today to record a couple of interviews. So I wrote some interview questions, which folks can use or not use, but let me share these and we can kind of talk about how we might want to do this. Let me find it in my email here. Sorry, so many emails. Here it is. Okay, I'll put it in the chat. So, this is something that I think applies to anyone here that, oopsie, I gotta do it in chunks here. Pause is too long. So people will interview you about your research, and whether it's like a video interview or something for print, something for your university's marketing or there's a variety of people who might do that. And so this would be good practice both for like figuring it out when you're involved in this, like, okay, well, I was asking myself, okay, so I'm the editor of this book. What would I want somebody to ask me about it, or what would make sense to ask me about it? And also, what's the purpose? Like the purpose for fielding is letting them know what's happening with the faculty, grad students, et cetera, in the lab. And it's for prospective students too. I'd like to do some at some point about uh, anything to do with what it's like working in the lab. What have you done? What have you been working on? Why do you want to do it? You know, just different things like that too. That if you were looking around and you wanted to know what it was like to be in a program, that you would get some real people in the program and their perspectives. So we could Andres, would you like to talk about any of the stuff about it? It's different depending on who's asking you, how you're preparing for it, what the content is. And I'm asking you particularly because I know, like me in my early days, uh, some of the work you do is seen as controversial or people want to fight about it. And so that's a thing as well. Like I don't have that gut inclination anymore of like, I better be on my toes because there's going to be someone who's going to be fighting with me. Um, the closest I get nowadays is like uh, people who think different things about, say, parasocial relationships than I do, but it's not sort of like they're not like lying in wait, you know, to attack, or they don't want my data so they can reanalyze it, which is the case if you do media violence research. So this, of course, is you call it. You guys are in entertainment. I'm not. Some of you, it's like a soft thing, like do whatever you want. We want pictures of, we want people to be able to get to know you and what you're working on, and videos are a good way to communicate that. So it's very open and supportive and soft, and I'm proposing we do it here. Um, but other people will be calling you to like make you sweat for a long time on a radio show or something. So, any thoughts on interviews about
The,
your work, Andres?
Yeah, yeah, I've gotten to do it in a couple of different capacities. For fielding, it's our, in sort of within the kind of infrastructure of your own university. And obviously, in this case, it's going to go on a website. Outside people are going to have access to it, but within the confines, right, sort of the infrastructure. I always find that kind of what you said, Karen, it's much more free form, right? And we're just trying to put on the best shit show, so to speak, right, that we can,
Mhm.
and try to elicit your strengths as a graduate student and the strengths of the program, right, and how do those things intersect. I tend to find to be what people are really interested in, particularly in a program that's kind of as fluid and as flexible as ours can be to a certain degree. It's hard for people to sort of wrap their minds around what is sort of the lived experience of a grad student in this program. So anything you guys can say that I think can elicit that, I think that that's really what people, what we're hoping for, as well as shining a spotlight on all the awesome things that you do. And really, that's the way that I try to treat any of these interviews, even in instances whether it's the media violence stuff or like climate change stuff. Obviously, as Karen said, that
Andreas, the climate is not changing. Thoughts?
the climate, yeah, exactly. That one's easy because I can always be like, I'm not a climatologist, so like, don't argue with me. Go argue with someone else. Um, but those right, those topics kind of carry, some connotations of one side, other side, debate kind of a thing. And so it can be a little bit more gotcha. But in the case of a lot of what we're doing here in this episode, it's always positive, and it's always, I always find it as an opportunity to sort of to market yourself and to market your skills. Because the other thing that tends to happen is that people will encounter you through the interviews, right, that you give. So really early in my grad school, I did career. I did an interview with Vice about my climate change stuff, and that just like it was one paper I did with Craig, and I was doing the video game VR stuff, and then got a random email from a random journalist. We did the interview or whatever. That was very much at a hour-long phone call with this person, and they had a lot of questions, and they really, and so that was a little bit more intense. But then what ended up happening was that now, and I still do, will occasionally get emails or contact requests from people who read that article. They're like, oh, I read this article about climate change and violence or whatever, and you were the person that they were talking to, so like we want to hear more from you directly for XYZ reason. So trying to think about these opportunities as putting your best foot forward, right? And how do you market yourself, especially for you who are going to be on the job market soon? These are really easy, like a portfolio in showbiz world, right? Really easy things that you can show people, or that when people Google you, right, they're going to pop up. And so really trying to think about, how do you position your strengths and shine a light on the cool things that you're doing, and taking this opportunity to really try to underscore that. I think it's the most important thing for all of you to think about. Again, especially because this isn't like a open academic sort of debate or anything like that. So yeah, just you all are awesome, and you all are so smart. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. So market yourselves.
Yeah, it was something that I didn't think about in grad school. I didn't think like people are going to be phoning me, or you're going to be at a conference and they're going to say, "Hey, can we interview you for the news or something?" Like I think, no, that's stuff that happens to Craig. But it does, and things can just take off. But talking about making what we do in the lab visible, it's like when you show up to a physical lab, if you haven't visited or something, you don't really know what it's going to be like, what the vibe of something is. But if you can hear some of us talking, you might be able to, as a prospective student, see yourself like, okay, I would be a fit with that lab, or, ooh, I don't know, they seem a little something that doesn't quite, you know, make me think I would fit in there. It's kind of a window into that, and just what it's like. That's so cool. Jesse, will you send that out to us
Yeah.
when it comes around?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely talked about like my journey at Fielding too, and just like some of the research. So, starting to brand myself in that area of like, we
Yeah.
gonna be the true crime queen. Let's
Yeah.
figure it out, and just become the specialist and the trailblazer in the research in that area. So I'm glad to hear you say that, Andreas, because it was like, okay, we doing it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
doing it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Right. And yeah, I mean, you could put I on my, like I have a big Vita, like with everything supposedly on it. Um and then I have a little one that's like normal nowadays, where you have like a one-page CV or a two-page CV. So people don't have to, swim their way through everything you've ever done. But I used to have a list of like links to magazines and shows or whatever that I had been on, just to make the point that people have talked to me about my research.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wait, really quick, just to clarify, are you asking for people's participation to be interviewed for a special project for the lab? Because I'm down to do that if you need me to do that.
Yeah, so today we were going to do this thing about the handbook, and we can see if we've got time for that or what. But maybe just the Josh and Perry part, if you two are down for that. I also need to ask Patrick. Maybe I can ask Patrick to interview me at a later time, and vice versa. I'll interview him. But we want to have video content to represent the entertainment psych lab. Dr. McGraw asked me, so it's kind of like I'm going to pick your lab, and probably because we're a media psych, and she's like, they can use media. um, you know, uh, just take some assets, as Jean-Pierre calls them, collect some assets, photos and videos and such. So yeah, we could do whatever we want. They just want content. Individuals could interview each other, and you know how they do, they'll cut it up into separate chunks, and I'm thinking more brief interviews, because You know how people are, they don't want like an hour and a half documentary or something. They want like, I don't know, how many minutes is it now? I don't know how many minutes of a video do people want to watch? Is it 2? Is it 7? I don't know.
It sort of depends. I feel like what most people do now is they make a long video and then they use social media to pump out small clips of it and then direct you to the long video.
Yeah, we
Uh,
could do that too. Like if Stephen and Jesse were interviewing each other on a Zoom and recording it, and they could be like, let's talk about this now. And
yeah.
then you guys have to like put on different shirts. That looks like different days.
Exactly.
Do your hair in different ways. Stephen will have like some ponytails. That was ponytail day.
How I dress down after the meeting.
That's right.
Yeah, no problem.
Fun fact, when I was little, my mom bought me a swim cap that had fake ponytails that came out the tops. I just thought that was crazy. Fun. Fun times at the pool.
Shirts.
All right. I don't want to put you two on the spot. Putting Josh and Barry on the spot. Are you up for doing this here and now, or what do you guys think?
Sure.
And we would then like turn off, the rest of us would turn off our mics. We honestly, we can stay or go depending on what y'all think. And you can use my questions or you can use totally other questions. It's just having some content about the Oxford Handbook of Media Psych coming out.
Should we turn off our video too, so the focus is on Josh?
You guys tell us what you'd like.
I feel like seeing the lab being actively listening could be beneficial.
I like that.
All right, nobody do anything weird in the background.
Really sell it,
Karen.
guys.
I think too, we can open it up for questions after as well. If anyone wants to chime in.
Sure.
So who's interviewing you? Is it Josh and I going back and forth, or Karen, are we doing yours right now as well?
Let's do you and Josh. And just as a heads up there, because Perry's co-authors were Tanya Messenschlager and Gavin Roffler. I don't know if if Perry or Josh wants to actually say those, or it's kind of a mouthful. So just putting that out there. And again, edit. I'll just be sitting in the background, and you guys can do what you like.
Okay. Josh, do you want to be the interviewer first or the interviewee?
I'm open to whatever. Uh, you can interview me first then. It's fine.
Sounds good. All right. Hot set, everyone.
We're recording, and do we have the thing where the speaker will come into the view, you know? You know what I'm saying? Who's is it Josh and Perry's computer that has to be set like that, where the speaker gets big on the screen?
Who's running the recording? Steve,
Steven.
that's you?
Steven might have to
I
pin
think
people,
it
right?
does it automatically, but I can just highlight.
I think,
I think.
yeah, the recording might.
Yeah, there's a view change.
Should I
So if any-
spotlight
Yeah.
Perry or Josh for everyone?
So maybe spotlight Josh first, and then while I'm interviewing him, and then we'll flip it.
There you go.
Hello, Josh.
Hi.
Hi. Well, I'm excited to talk with you today about the Oxford Handbook of Media Psychology, which we've both been authors for, and we're going to talk about today. But I know that with the book coming out, I'm so excited to read all of the articles, but especially the one that you co-wrote with Karen Shackleford and Melanie Green about the social psychology of audience involvement. Can you tell me a little bit about what goes on in your chapter?
Yeah, so overall, as you said, it is about the social psychology, about audience involvement. So we look at audience involvement in a dynamic way, meaning that it doesn't just happen when someone is in front of a screen necessarily, but it continues to happen outside of actual viewing. And also this idea of identity versus parasocial. These are two separate constructs, and in this particular chapter, that is explained, and how oftentimes it might be that they might kind of overlap in some writing. They really shouldn't. They're two separate constructs, and sometimes one is mistaken for the other. My particular insights, as far as what I added to the chapter, were about social surrogacy and nostalgia, and particularly in relation to repeat watching TV shows and movies. Social surrogacy really starts with this idea of the belongingness hypothesis, and that was coined in 1995 by Baumeister and Leary, and they said they looked at the extensive literature on attachment and belonging, and they said that the need to belong has been codified over the years, but it is not doesn't have its rightful place. Along with the need to belong is just as important as the need for food and shelter. And so, psychologists like Abraham Maslow said, well, it's in there. It's in the hierarchy of needs. But once survival needs are met, then we worry about belonging. And these two social psychologists said, no, this is on par with that need. People need to feel like they belong. Humans are social creatures, and without that sociality, they will not have normative functioning. It will hurt them quite a bit. And so from that, this idea of social surrogacy came along, the idea that just like when someone is in like a desert place or a forest place where there's a wilderness, and they're hungry or they're tired, and they become much more keen on food sources and shelter sources than they would if they were not in those places and did not feel that way. So if someone has a need to belong, and it's an acute need to belong, they become much more aware of non-traditional sources of belonging. And that's what social surrogacy really is, the idea that we can have unconventional ways in which humans meet their belongingness needs. And one of those, in particular, that we talk about in this chapter, related to parasocial phenomena, is social surrogacy through TV shows and movies, specifically rewatching our favorite TV shows and movies. And so that's what I discussed, that when we revisit TV shows and movies that we have enjoyed over the years, it provides us a chance to revisit. There's that social connection, that parasocial connection, revisit with those characters and individuals that we have built up a social connection with through repeat watching over the years. And there, it adds to our social fuel tank, so to speak, where we feel connected, and we can actually experience uh, a sense of belonging. As a matter of fact, early studies on this, like in 2008, Derek and colleagues found that even thinking about these TV shows, not even watching them, this is where the dynamic part of this comes in the sense you don't even need to be in front of the screen. Even thinking about them actually it puts a hedge against loneliness and rejection in people's minds. And social surrogacy was a big part of what I wrote about in the chapter. And then also nostalgia, the idea of nostalgia, once again, connecting us with people, whether in our past or events in our past, characters in our past, whatever the case may be, whether it be real characters or fictional characters, real places, real events, or fictional. They connect us with things we've experienced before, and often these are positive experiences that we remember nostalgically, and doing so connects that to the self and the social self. And the idea is that the most important story in nostalgia or any story is our own. And so we connect with the stories of others, reconnect with nostalgia, and it boosts our own self-concept. It boosts our own story. We feel consistent with ourselves, and that is why nostalgia is often very powerful, both in fictional stories and used in other contexts as well. And so I talk about nostalgia. So those are the two main areas that I contributed to the chapter.
It's awesome. And I know you had some great co-authors on this project. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like working with Karen Shackleford and Melanie Green?
Yeah, so working with both of those scholars, outstanding scholars and writers, was intimidating. And it's always intimidating when you're working with people you admire. And what I found is it brought out my best work. And so it was great working with them and seeing their process and incorporating my own into that and seeing how, it all meshed. And this is a great part of a great aspect of scholarly writing is that you get to combine the insights that you have gotten from your research with others. So like parasocial identification, social surrogacy, nostalgia, all of these things are linked. And it was a great opportunity to work with these individuals to link these things and also to get this information out so that other scholars and individuals can learn this very important content.
Awesome. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you about, from your perspective, obviously there's some work that goes into taking on a chapter like this. What's the benefit of contributing to a chapter in a handbook, and why did you say yes to this opportunity?
Well, first and foremost, it is the work of the mind in order to draw these insights from research and to put them on a page and to deliver them to others who appreciate it. The work itself has inherent value, and I'm appreciative of that. I get to do that great work of the mind where you are researching, you're writing for others to read and be able to take your work. And my hope is that the benefit is that the hope is that when others read it, they'll be inspired to uh, do their own research, conduct their own studies, write their own insights, and further the conversation about parasocial, about identification, about this dynamic process. My specific contributions, like in social surrogacy and nostalgia as well, that we can continue to add to the conversation and grow this field.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh.
My pleasure.
Ooh, all right.
All right, we have with us here today Dr. Perry Reed, and he is a co-author of a chapter for the Oxford Handbook of Media Psychology and on social psychology and audience involvement. And just a few questions about the chapter and your involvement with it. Dr. Reed, what was the
Sorry.
chapter? Yes.
We got to cut. I think there's a typo in the interview guide, or it's on creative AI.
Oh, I know that didn't sound right when I was saying it. I was just reading it off yeah, that didn't sound right.
Oops, I wrote audience involvement instead of artificial intelligence. Sorry.
You said creative, what was it?
You could just say generative AI and all. It's
Okay.
there.
Okay. All right, take two. All right. Yes, we have Dr. Perry Reed with us here today and answering a few questions about the recently published Oxford Handbook of Media Psychology, which he contributed to a chapter about generative AI, and a few questions for you, Dr. Reed, about your experience. What was the chapter about? Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the ideas covered in the chapter and your contributions?
Sure. Well, this was a really fun chapter to write. Really, this chapter takes a look at the field of artificial intelligence, but really through the lens of what's becoming called creative AI, which is when we take generative AI and use it in creative contexts. And to me, this is really what has changed the game in terms of how people are talking about AI now. It's definitely one of those things that's been a kind of minor conversation for many years, but definitely in the last few years, we've seen it just become the big buzzword is AI. And never mind that we've been using AI and machine learning in a lot of our technologies for years and decades now. But as we've started to see it used in surprising ways, or at least that feels surprising to us as people, it really changes the conversation. And one of those ways is when we see AI being used to generate things that we really assume come from the human mind because they have some sort of creative intent and emotional purpose and insight behind it. And two really good examples of that is visual artwork and storytelling. So in this chapter, we spend a little bit of time talking about what generative AI is, not from a technical lens, but talking a little bit about the machine learning models that go on behind the scenes so that we are able to train these AI models to develop images or to output a story in text. I think even today we're seeing these like 8-second videos that are fully AI generated. So it gives us a little bit of insight into how that happens. But then we really spend time getting into the psychology of it, which is how do people perceive these creative artworks and what do they think about the AI tools that make them? And it's really covering the origins of this research. At this point, there's several years of research, but it's still spotty in the sense that it's spread out over so many different creative domains. So there's a few things about visual art, there's a few things about poetry, there's now a few more things about stories than there were when we started writing. Um, but really, we've been trying to make sense of one, can people even tell if a creative work is human generated or AI generated? And that's really where some of the early studies were in this area. And we actually found, and I say we loosely, I'm not the one who did those studies, but a lot of the time people actually can't accurately tell what was AI created and what was human generated. And then we started shifting the conversation a bit to talk about, well, what is it about AI that changes people's perspective? There's research showing that simply putting the label AI on something, whether it was a human or not, can change what people think about it in terms of how they appreciate it, the meaning they think that goes into it. At surface level, it's just their preferences between, this artwork or that artwork. And that really has become the genesis for a lot of my own research around what I call the creative mind, or how we perceive AI to potentially have the capacity to do these creative things. So those are just a few of the things that go on within the chapter. Again, it's with the handbook chapter you get, feels like a very short amount of space to talk about a lot of things in an emerging field like this. It was really important that we covered the basics of what is that generative AI, how is it being used in creative fields today, and what has some of the early research focus been on?
Thank you for that response. Tell me about what it was like working with your co-authors on this project.
Sure. So I got to work with three co-authors on this one, led by Marcus Appel. And what was really interesting about this opportunity is that Dr. Marcus Appel, and one of his students, Tanya Messingschlager, had actually written an article that directly inspired my dissertation research, which was around AI as a storyteller and people's perceptions of that. So in getting to write this chapter with them, it was a fun opportunity to get to learn a little bit more about their perspective, right? Because when you write anything, you have to kind of build that one coherent and cohesive argument and put it down one track. But then when you actually get to have a dialogue and discussion with other scholars, you can go a few more places, right? You're not so worried about building the one strong argument. You can say like, but what if we thought about it this way or that? So I think that was really the fun idea, is just having those couple initial meetings where we talked about what is the focus for this chapter, how bold of claims do we want to get, how conservative do we want to keep it, and how do we write about this in a way that's not going to feel out of date the second it's in print. And there's no way to do that, especially in a field like this. So really the fun part was charting that course, and I'd say the rest of it felt very similar to any other research project you might do or student project people might have done before, where you kind of assign, develop an outline together, assign maybe a couple primary writers, send it around, have the next people take a pass. You separate out different sections to write. All of that you kind of figure out within your own team.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything in particular that you'd like your readers to understand better?
Sure. I think what I'd really want people to take away on this topic is that for me personally, and this is not as clearly stated within the article, but I firmly believe there's value to human creativity. And even though I spent a lot of time talking about AI in creative contexts, I'm never endorsing the use of AI, even as I'm continuing to explore it personally. But within the chapter, the message I hope that people get is that a lot of it comes down to perception. And, this field is going to continue to change because it's all about the ways that we value art today, that we value creative works, that we compensate and pay people for their creative endeavors. And so, what this chapter is really saying that is in the context of media psychology, it always comes back to the people, right? Um, we know that AI is continuing to change, and you and I were just having a conversation earlier this week that some people are maybe a little more hesitant to say AI is going to keep evolving and getting better and better. Others are saying, it's the way of the future. I think regardless, we know that the way that AI is accessed, how much it is embedded into things, the more familiar people are with it, even if it stays in the technological state it is today, it'll continue to get integrated more and more into society. So it's really kind of a call to people to be very mindful about the role of AI and where it gets involved and how we use it in creative contexts and what that means for the people who created a lot of the work that these AI models were trained on. So, um, long story short is I hope people take away just a new perspective and they kind of stop as they're continuing to see these AI tools getting used and think about what goes into offsetting human creativity into machines.
I love that perspective and mindfulness. That's terrific. One last question. As far as your contributions to the chapter, what was the benefit of contributing to a chapter in handbooks like this one?
Sure. Well, I think for me, it was a really good opportunity to help frame the narrative around an emerging topic. And I think that's really a goal of handbooks like this. And I remember reading the first edition back when I first started my master's degree in media psychology, is you're really framing the conversation, right? When you get a table of contents, it's telling you what is important within media psychology and what matters to people. And then within each of those chapters, you typically have at least one already well-recognized lead author who's kind of setting the tone and the stage. So for me, the benefit is getting to work with this team, especially Marcus Appel, who's, already a well-established researcher and thought leader in this field. It really gave me that bigger perspective on how to really frame and channel the narrative, right? It's a big responsibility to say, in X thousand words, tell us what the field of media psychology should care about on this topic. So the benefit of getting to do something like that is getting to be part of that conversation. So I hope when people read it, they're really have been able to maybe inspire them in the directions they can take it or how they can approach that in their own future research or coursework or whatever they're doing. But for me, that is really one of the biggest benefits of having been part of this project.
Well, great. Thank you for your time and answers, Dr. Reed.
All right, thank you so much.
That was great. Thank you guys for doing that. I could see us having a conversation just videoing. I mean, we do in lab, but like more formally. Uh, how about this? If you don't mind, I'll take 5 minutes to just throw a question out that I had from Perry's talk, and we'll see how it goes. Uh, so Dr. Reed talked about his research and writing in generative AI, and it makes me wonder what people's perceptions are here. Specifically, my question is this: when you think about who or what generated a story, the story that comes from generative AI, what do you think the answer to that is? Who wrote that story? like the story that was in Perry's dissertation, for instance. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Stephen, but I would love an engineering answer.
Well, I have thought about this a good long while because I was familiar with Perry's work. I don't know if I have the answer, but I have one that I think satisfies me, complicated as it might be. I think as far as ownership goes, who owns the work, I don't think that you can say it is owned. It's not a person who wrote it. It's not a company who designed the software that wrote it, because it's all based off of other people's work. So it's kind of this massive collaborative effort that, in my opinion, should exist in the fair use kind of umbrella. It is just, it spawned from knowledge. It's knowledge by knowledge almost. Um, as far as like the engineering side of it, though, I think it's maybe more of uh, that's more complicated when you start talking about licensing and that sort of thing. Maybe psychologically, if we want to keep uh, digging down deeper and deeper, um, I think that might be more up to the person who's reading, because so much of the meaning that we get from these things, stories in general, is not given by the author. I think back to the cliche of the seventh grade English teacher who says, write a book about what Moby Dick means to you. And everyone, one person will say, oh, it's just a big whale. It tells me not to go swimming in the ocean. And another person might say, like, it feels like how I feel when I'm having to write a big book report and say it in front of the class. It's going to be different for each person. So um, I think it's really interesting to read and hear what other people have to say on this subject, because it kind of betrays their own views of what stories mean to them. So I don't know if
Mhm.
that's a
Your response kind of sparks something in me from a different field, from theater and from screenwriting, that it seems to me like the computer scientist or engineer who wrote the programming or part of the programming, they're an author in a way, not necessarily an author of the story, but someone, and I don't know the details of this, but someone put an algorithm in there about what's a good story structure and how do you put parts together. It's like when a character on a stage in the theater talks, you think those thoughts came from them, and that's what you want. But there's a writer who wrote the words, and he's kind of, or she's kind of invisible in that process. So, and there's a lot of ethics that I'm just sliding over right here, because we haven't talked about the ethics of taking art and then reusing it, repurposing it, using it to learn, or imitating it. That's certainly another factor there. I don't know how it all works, so I don't know if you could even trace it back to any given person, or are they deriving patterns when they create new stories from many stories that have been written by people. But
So there were
those are the
two, I
kinds
think
of
there were
things I
two.
think about.
Oh, sorry. So Apple published a really interesting report where they proved that contemporary AI can't handle logic. It doesn't use logic. It uses um, proximity to other words. And so if you ask it to do a calculation, if then, which we need in drama, in narrative, which is cause and effect, and that's the nature of a narrative story, it said that AI is not in that sense there yet, because it can't actually connect to the sequence of things. It can create a set of proximate words and best guess what happens next. But if you asked it to do a cause and effect of 3 steps in a story, it can't do that yet, because that's not how it doesn't objectify the lies. Perry, you could probably step in, but that Apple, I think, republished that this week or last week, and kind of disproved this idea of logical logical progression, if you will.
Well,
But there was.
that's big news to me. Just
Oh,
I
let me
assumed
let
that
me
they
find
were
that.
they were taking it like we need an actor, we need an action, we need a context, we need a conflict.
Yeah,
I
and
thought they
then
were deriving all that.
yeah, and so but what they did, and they can do it for one cycle and perhaps a second cycle, and then, but they can't do it and then and then and then. So they can't create that sequentiality, if that's the word, of narrative story. And so I don't know, Perry might be able to say it, but there was an interesting, I just want to throw in, there was an interesting word. I was looking at where all of this technological layers will take us. And there was a definition probably in the more um, in the tech side, and it talked about a cobot. And so they suggested that there's humans, and between humans and robots is cobots, which is where we use tech either on a production line or somehow to help us, but we still lead it. So it's our co-author or our co-partner, and we plug it in or we put it on or we do whatever to make ourselves better. And so they thought that technology was going to help us and support us and allow us to do better for a period before it eventually kind of takes over. So I thought that was an interim kind of step. And I think that's a step we're in now, which is it probably can't, that's, I'm just riffing a little bit, but it's like, it can't replace us yet, but it can help us do better. So it can help us have better imagery, it can help us write better, it can edit our work, it can do all of that, but it can't yet create that. And we're probably, it thought, some quite, a decade away from it being able to replace. I don't know, Perry, you might have a thought on what the timeline is.
No, it's funny because, to me it's more rapid. We were laughing because we did good news is we got our essentially revise and resubmit for the AI stories article, which is the best outcome from an initial submission. And the funny part is you learn the personalities of reviewers quickly, and there's always one who's like, I love it, but I'm going to say everything in a very snarky tone. And they were like, don't buy into the trope that it's going to constantly improve. New research shows that it's like, giving diminishing returns and yada yada. And I think, as I'm formulating the response to it, it's more about I'm I believe the technology itself will continue to rapidly improve. What we know, I think, pretty surely is that its access and integration into everything that we do is going to continue to improve. So it's not so much about just how much is the technology going to change, but at what rate are we incorporating it? Even a lot of AI tools today, right? People aren't actually using them as much as we think they are at the high proportions we think they are. So that's maybe a non-answer, but a perspective on that.
It does seem like there's a level of creativity still as we in the point that we are with the tech that needs to go into it. Large language models are like how Ross was describing. It's looking for patterns in how words go together and what seems to be more commonly trained on. So um, that's what's consistent between different AI tools is that it's trained on a certain set of data. If it's trained on all these different stories, it will provide you something, but it's got to be told what to provide at the same time because you can't just say, here's this language model, train on it. It's got to be something after that. So there's still like to Karen's point too, that there's a coder out there that's saying, here's what it trains on, and then here's kind of what we wanted to do. I saw a great video of someone training an AI bot to make him laugh, and it very quickly found that he would laugh at a specific sound effect. It could put the sound effect with any image and he would just laugh. And it just kept spamming that same thing over and over. So it's really just looking to maximize its returns. It's still just and the base logic of it is like this very simple machine kind of thing. So there is still human creativity that's going into like how it's returning of something for you. I wonder if that would be, and now you're seeing AI models that are training itself on another AI model. So you're seeing these kind of like layered aspects. So I wonder how that might change and if at some point it will just be creative because there's so many layers of like human ingenuity that has built this this tool. I don't know. I'm also just riffing on that too.
Well, I wonder, like, for instance, if you say, because I know how Perry wrote prompts for different stories, if you said, write a horror story for me that's set in a rainy mansion and has an elderly couple and there's a conflict, is it kind of like it goes to an archive and says, okay, horror and like setting and like, does anyone know anything about that kind of process?
But I would say that it's pretty easy to train a model to do that if you input source, and one of them is basic story structures. So there's a book you probably know, The 7 Basic Plots, and others in screenwriting world that pretty much everybody knows. So whether it's the hero's journey, those kinds of things, it's pretty easy. Once there's a model, several examples, and of course there's plethora of examples of stories, but also epics. So if there's something that has lasted in the culture or even pop culture that has now got everyone gripped, it's pretty easy for the AI to figure out the beats and replicate that with, you know, different characters in the same role, kind of like your Doctor Who example.
Yeah, like, so if I said, take Scooby-Doo, but make them all teenage girls or, whatever it is that I want,
Yeah.
set it in the 90s. I don't know.
See, now you sound like a pitch meeting. That's kind of how it goes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and AI might bring back something so fascinating because it's not being constrained by our own layers of meaning inside ourselves. It's just finding, oh, well, here's this topic and this topic, and we'll meld it in a way that is 50% or 50%, or um, and then you reading it, it's like, wow, this is so creative, but it's really because you're now thinking outside of your own thought structures by using this machine who just kind of like smashed some things together and made it sound nice. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do understand in pitch meetings, they say like, okay, like, uh, superhero movies worked, so therefore we're gonna like do this. But it relates to our work, our research about nostalgia and revisiting, rewatching media because Scooby-Doo, for instance, is something that people have loved over time, and it does have a structure. They make fun of themselves in the stories where Fred will say, "I'm going to design a trap," and then Scooby and Shaggy will say, "We're not going in there," and then they say, "Will you do it for a Scooby snack?" So there's just like the normal like happenings, and then there's like a glowing monster, et cetera, et cetera. So knowing that there is that structure, and then in the end, the crazy thing that we all like, it could be like a mechanical puma, and at the end they pull a mask off, and it's an elderly lady or something like that. So so then you could take that and play with it, make it the band a boy band, like mash up a boy band, a Korean boy band, and Scooby-Doo, or something like that. And then the fans, my point being that the fans would then really like it because it has all those Scooby-Doo elements that give you the feels, but so it's like known, but then, oh, something else that I like, this is, or another context, or a different type of couple, or or what have you. So I do think entertainment, they're right about that when they try to bank on, well, we know that they understand who Sherlock Holmes is. Okay, so we're going to do that, but we're going to, repackage it, make it different, make it a little different, and maybe the fans will feel safe with that. They'll feel it's familiar, and they want to come check it out.
So,
I think in creative fields, they always say not to copy, but to steal. So as an artist, we're taught there's nothing new under the sun, but there's fusion, there's remixing, there's adding your own flavor to something. So you can take the model of whatever it is and then feed in all the variables you can think of, and then have the AI just insert those, just the way you said. They say that with musicians too. There's this concept called Save the Cat. I don't know, Ross, if you've heard of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
It's a
familiar.
way to take a basic structure and humanize it. So Save the Cat comes from if the hero at some point, despite all his flaws and being very Arnold Schwarzenegger in personality, at one point he saves a cat. Then the whole audience goes, "Aw." So those little things, once you've fed into the model that you must include that, or there must be a talisman, you can see it in everything. So then what makes something good? It's when someone does it with a little flair or specificity that's either so personal or so true that people recognize it and it has emotion. But that can also be programmed, which is the challenge because it's using some of the greatest stories as the input to create the models.
Yeah, you know, when you say that, Angel, it makes me think it's a different way of recycling stories than AI does. Like that is already going on in the sense that,
Yeah.
like, if you have 45 minutes and you need to establish that your main character is likable, even if they're grumpy or whatever, arrogant or something, if they save the cat, then you understand that they have a heart, that there's something good about them, and so yeah, just keep so in a way it's not the same as like here's the text that everyone has written and they stick it into AI, but it's, oh, I've seen all these things and I know what works, so I'm gonna just humans are gonna recycle that.
So so I think there's a dystopian thing, which I think Perry kind of tapped into, which is suppose we have this engine, this amazing engine, and in 10 years' time it can do this. But Karen says, you know what? I don't really want Asians in my story. So when you play that story to me, take them out. Or if I'm in the Midwest somewhere and I'm less than that, well, I don't really want colored people in my version of the story. So play the story to me, but just with my characters and the people I want in it. Or and so we potentially, which my mind goes off in the, like down, and the thing is, we all just get a story that suits us. We get a story that we want. We're all plugged into a different story. It's almost becomes what's the Matrix. There was a set of amazing graphic shorts done around the Matrix called the Animatrix, which is about this kind of dystopian future, which is we all just simply get machines feeding us whatever we tell them we want to hear based on what we think we want to hear. And there's no common kind of thread because, I'm like, well, I'd like to see a lot more LGBT people in my version of the story because that's something I kind of identify with. And somebody else says, oh, well, I want more kind of intellectual stimulus. I'm not interested in the romance part of it. And we all just get something different. And to Perry's point about creativity, does it then have meaning or is it simply just a machine occupying our minds for a minute, telling us something that we want to hear and soothing us, which is, I think, a future question for us. I mean, I'm really intrigued by this idea. What happens when machines are telling us stories? Do they have meaning? And if they have meaning for us, what meaning is it in the context of social meaning? Because no one else is hearing the story I've just asked it to tell me. Sorry, I mean, that's a kind of a...
Something you guys can try, because you probably all have Alexas, I'm guessing. No, I'm not talking to you. You can ask your device, any device, or even your phone, say Siri, ask it to tell you a story. And then after it does, try again another time, but this time give it a couple parameters. So when I was in fourth grade, my teacher said it's much easier with limitation to come up with a great story. We had to reach into a big barrel and pull out pieces of paper, and mine was giraffe and rubber band. Well, I was off to the races. This unleashed so much creativity. But for the AI, it makes it really easy to get a tailored story. So that's something I play with all the AIs, because you can say, give me a 60-second story.
Yeah.
Just see what
Well, like you were talking about the tailored stories, I can see possible benefits and possible harms, like benefits being, okay, let's say that I have like a psychological need to see women empowered or something, so I ask to have them tell me a lot of stories like that. That could be good for me, could be inspiring. But then what if Ross was saying that I'm like, oh, this is horrifying. Like one of my best friends is Japanese. No Asian people in my story, like, or whatever it is. Like, oh, now we're getting into, or the sky's the limit, right? Anything. So yeah, that's the idea that you bring up there, Russ. Boy, it just opens so many possibilities and questions.
Something that also came up for me with Stephen, you were talking about that one video of the like AI researcher who looked at creating an AI to make him laugh, and it was I watched that video. He recreated, or what the AI did was it realized that if it did the Vine sound boom effect, that would make him laugh. And so what came up then was this concept of exploration versus exploitation. And so once the AI figured out, okay, this is going to give me a consistent result that will be positively, valued by the receiver, I'm going to stop exploring and I'm just going to exploit that one niche. And so what the individual had to do then was artificially engineer the exploration back into the AI and say, okay, awesome, you figured it out. 9 out of 10 times, do what you're doing, do what you think is going to produce the optimal result. But for every 10th time, I want you to innovate and do something new. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, what is a replication mechanism that's mostly correct, but sometimes has an error, and within that error produces outcomes that actually are even better than the one that they're consistently doing. And an example of that is DNA replication, right? Like that is the basis of evolution, is repeating the blueprint that you have, and every now and again it's a little bit different, and sometimes it's a mistake and it's worse and a frog has a third leg, right? Or sometimes it's better and it can survive underwater for longer, right? And so to me what that mirrors is, if we want AI to get to this place of like actual like artificial what is it, AGI, right, of logic or intelligence, that we're going to have to be looking at these sort of like universal truisms about how did intelligence arise, in humans in this world. And so right now, what it looks like we have is sort of just this like probabilistic predictive model. And that's an aspect of human cognition, but that's not the entirety of human cognition and of logic. And so I wonder if maybe the answer to that is not continuing in this same sort of probabilistic, this word's here, so probably this word's here, but that's a feature of the AI, but that we also create these systems that replicate the human mind, or get closer to, right, like how our mind works. And so the answer might lie somewhere in between, to Perry's point of there's papers coming out saying like LLMs that work on this probabilistic feature, maybe we've hit a wall and they're not going to get better. Well, maybe it's that we have to come up with some new modality of adding probability to these other features. So I don't know, that's just kind of what came up for me.
That's interesting because it's a way of sort of making us smarter because we keep having to play with it. And Angel's observation too, that we're playing with the AI, we're playing with what we're asking it. And so, yeah. Well, I'm glad we took time to have this conversation. It was a lot of fun. And I know we have another meeting that we're supposed to go on, but I think it was very enjoyable and time well spent. So thank you all. So are we gonna transition here to music stuff?